presenting a basis for a public mythology. It's a toxification and a pollution of the psychological environment, the mental environment. So we can't have the discussions we need to have in our society on the really major issues, such as how are we going to have, how are we going to do energy? I mean, global warming, I'm sure, is there's good cause to fear that and to rectify that. But when I compare what's going on in Fukushima, when I compare the dangers of these nuclear plants in California, which are also on fault lines, or on earthquake fault lines, which can expect tsunamis just like Fukushima could to follow the earthquakes. When I think of the kind of imminent dangers that represents, I think, well, that's got to be where our political priority is. Yes, we need to do things about global warming, and frankly, when I look at this, I wonder, was the nuclear industry involved in building up the public perceptions around global warming to steer attention away from the nuclear industry? I mean, we were given the impression that nuclear energy is kind of green, and now we have Fukushima turning into a kind of a slow nuclear bomb, and so suddenly, that symbolism is rightfully blown away, but we're not getting the information. It's not being reported properly. We're not getting, the President of the United States, Barack Obama, who is, he's funded by, he's a lobbyist for the nuclear energy industry. It's big among his, campaign sponsors. So, how are we going to get the information we need so we can have a proper public debate?
Now, I mean, isn't this the system? I mean, private ownership of the nuclear industry and capitalism, isn't this, it's a business of making profit? I mean, isn't that what it's all about?
Well, of course, GE's spokesperson, Ronald Reagan, he eventually became governor of California and president of the United States. And he advanced a theory of deregulation, that governments should get smaller, that they should get out of the way of business, that business should have more latitude, and if business got bigger, then government would get smaller. This deregulation and privatization, we see where it led with the financial debacle, which is all about deregulation. Deregulation was in fact used by these executive branches and their creative accounting departments to essentially steal the capital from even the shareholders, the pension holders. So deregulation became a kind of basis for kleptocracy. We look at the Gulf of Mexico and the BP spill, and we see, well, where was the Army Corps of Engineers? I mean, it was left to the companies, the deregulated companies. Now we see in Japan, this TEPCO company has no liability. They have limited liability. In fact, the whole nuclear energy industry is based on the idea that you can't get insurance for these. No insurance company would sell policies. So the taxpayer is left, we take the danger of the radioactivity, and we also take the financial liability. So this privatization and deregulation, I mean, when even nuclear plants are treated as if they're private for-profit operations, well, they couldn't be for-profit really if the true costs were there. If they actually had to buy insurance, what would the insurance rates be for these plants? So it's what is being called capitalism has become this kind of kleptocracy, where a very small entitled minority use their wealth and the access to political influence which it purchases to thieve not only wealth away from the public, but political influence and power that should be ours if we had a viable political culture, a political system, which we obviously don't. I mean, the two-party system has been demonstrated as bankrupt. What could have been a more dramatic shift, one would think, from Bush to Obama, and yet we see Obama carrying on in the military realm, in the financial realm, even increasing the severity and the radicalness, the right-wing radicalness of Bush policies, continuing the global war on terror and all the fraud and violations of law, domestic law, international law that it involves. So people have to find a way to somehow take back the power, and it's not going to be a simple matter of putting an X here or there on the ballot box. You know, people have to get much more involved in the responsibilities of citizenship and organizing, and this Fukushima matter. It's such a demonstration that, you know, the people who are supposed to be looking after us are not, and in fact are working contrary to the public interest and have to be held accountable. Fukushima, you know, to think that down the road there'll be a few individuals from TEPCO who might face criminal charges. No, we need to see the accountability for what is taking place there, and the millions of cancers and the deformities to come, and all the criminal negligence involved in allowing such a juxtaposition of conditions to ferment in the way that we see this, you know, biggest industrial disaster in history. There's no precedent for this. It's way beyond Chernobyl. I could see that in early days and wrote it down. You know, we have no way to really know how severe this is going to be, but it's thrown us over the abyss in a way. And if we can't mobilize to say no more nukes, this industry is not viable. It doesn't make sense. This is a crazy way to boil water, which is essentially all that's happening. If we can't get a grasp here, we're going to just see more and more Fukushimas. It's inevitable. And one of the first places, you know, the most imperiled and endangered places is right here in California.